morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it might be, wherever it is that you are. Happy time zone, everybody. It's Friday, thank God. I am so done with this week, and I'm already halfway through my Friday. And today, we have an extremely special guest. The chat's already excited that you're here, Sean. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
We're good.
Surviving.
Yeah. A little bit stressed out, but it's good. It's good.
Thank goodness it's Friday, though, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, but my day just starts, though. So you guys are way ahead. JP's Pacific, you're Central, right?
Yep.
There you go.
Central.
I've got the whole day ahead of me. Maybe I should move to a different time zone. How about that?
As soon as we're done with the show, I have 485 meetings to go to, so that'll be fun. And I went to the doctor yesterday, and she's like, "Oh, your blood pressure is high." I was like, "Okay, what is this news?" And she's like, "Is it always this high?" I was like, "I don't know. I mean, can you look? Is there history?" And she kind of looked at me like, there's something wrong with me. But I was like, "I don't know. I mean, I guess." And I've got to find a blood pressure thing that will, like, I can put a Power BI dashboard available and say, "Hey, this is what it's been over the past 4 weeks. So tell me I'm not going to die, please."
Yeah, you can't get the interactive one until you get the chip implant, and then you got to worry about that. All right.
I was like, "Look, we can put this right in the back of my neck, right? Did you ever see Elysium? Like, that'd be perfect."
Yeah, I wish.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess the rest of Elysium was a pretty awful place, but anyway, yeah, it's Friday. It's been a long week. Christos is only with us for half an hour today because he's gotten much bigger than all of us, and so he's going to go speak at a big conference today. So good luck to you.
And DC London in 45 minutes.
Yep.
I'm still writing my slides.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So we only have him for a little bit, so make sure you give him a hard time now.
Yeah. While I have time. That's good.
Yeah. So
and congrats. That's a hard conference to get into as well to speak. So. It's kind of like high school. You have to get used to the rejections, and
yeah.
So, but I'm glad you got in. That's cool.
It's one of these things. When I was in the UK, I always wanted to do NDC. So I had my fair share of rejections, and then eventually, at some point, I made it. When it was back in the good old days where you could turn up and do things, and I was so chuffed with the whole experience. The virtual experience is not as good as the other one, obviously, because you don't get to hang out with all the big people. But it is a massive conference, probably one of the biggest ones I've been. Mm-hmm. They used to hire the NDC. So what is it like? One of the biggest conference halls in London, the Excel, which is massive. Wow. Microsoft also hires these when they do major events in London, and man. 3,000-4,000 people attending there. It's crazy.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. When I got started speaking, I got used to screwing up so much that well, you don't know, right? I mean, you got to get out there. And when I was in college and took speech class, you couldn't hear me because my knees were knocking so loud. Now. With local conferences and user groups and just getting out there, you fail a few times, you tweak, you grow. Now I'm far more comfortable doing so much ad hoc. I can code on the fly. I'm okay with that. And now I'm streaming on Twitch, and I've got some amazing viewers. Sometimes I get help from them. It's fantastic. And I've grown so much just by speaking. And it's amazing how much you can grow as a speaker in development just by getting out there. So
yeah,
it's been good.
It's awesome. Well, so speaking of speaking,
speaking of speaking,
what are you speaking to us about today?
So I'm a cloud architect, and one of the things that I've done and I've helped other people with is architectural design of their infrastructure, from understanding their needs, what kind of servers they need, what kind of network requirements, security, things like that. So that's great. And you can put some things together. You can do a lot of kind of a proof of concept area, and I do more so with Azure. But once it's time to take what you have and you want to put that in towards maybe a test environment, production, and then you want replication. That's immediately, I mean, as soon as we do that in code, we're like, we need to automate some things. And from testing, for example, as soon as you write a unit test, you want that automated as much as possible. Well, when you develop a infrastructure, when you develop an environment, you want to be, and as soon as you have the need to replicate that to maybe different market areas, different Azure regions, etc., you're going to want to script that so that it's repeatable, it's executed in parallel, and it cuts so much, just saves so much time. So that's where a friend of mine mentioned, I was doing some Terraform, I've done Ansible, and he goes, check out Pulumi. The fact that it's got C#, and that was only C# came to the library to Pulumi about a year ago. And so looking at C#, ability to write resources, to build resources in Azure, like, this is fantastic. And the more I got into it, the more I love it. Now there's still so much I need to learn more of it. It's just that big, and there's so much to do. It's a lot of fun, and it's somewhat easy as far as the coding side.
So how does it? I guess so if I've never used Pulumi, what sort of classification is it? Like, is it like a Terraform style thing? Like, what's the point of it? Like, what does it do?
Yeah. Infrastructure as code is the big thing, right? And in fact, right there on their website, Pulumi Modern Infrastructure as Code, it's like Terraform. In fact, a lot of the libraries of Pulumi are based on Terraform.
Interesting.
Now, yeah, it's based on it. Now, to what extent, I don't know. And I have looked for the TF files to see if it's actually creating behind the scenes of any of the Terraform files. I haven't found those. So I really don't know that it's creating TF files and then executing Terraform behind the scenes. But more so, I think they're building their library based on what Terraform's been doing. So it's extending it and making it. Now I don't have to worry about Terraform files so much as C# code. Now,
yeah, that's awesome.
It is, right? And I also mentioned C# a lot because that's my primary language, but it's more than that. So it is infrastructure as code, but as we go to the Pulumi.com, we're going to jump into the docs. You're going to see that you can get started with some of the major cloud providers, as well as Kubernetes. Now, this is Kubernetes, the full Kubernetes, as in if you want to do a local install, something to that effect, it's you can do Azure Kubernetes service, but that's different because that's a different implementation of Kubernetes. So as I jump in here, you can see the getting started. Let's go down to Azure, again, my preferred area, and it talks about how to install Pulumi. I like Chocolatey, so that's my preferred installer or package manager, and I'm biased. I'm friends with the owner. He lives just actually a few miles north of me. So, but here's the key thing. You can get started using TypeScript, JavaScript, Python, Go, and C#.
Nice.
So, yes, I mean, so it's already built on many different languages, which is fantastic. It's so much easier to get started with. If you're a Python developer, it's already got a lot of the documentation. It's already got the libraries built for you, your pip packages, and same for Go. There's special instructions for that. And with C#, yeah, go ahead.
Is it open? Like, is the source available somewhere?
It is. Here in a second, I'll see if I can find that.
So we can contribute if
link.
we want to say add a new connector or a new service or a new extension. Nice.
Yeah, you can be a contributor. Like I said, I'll have to see if I can find the link to GitHub. It's
Because I don't want to. I mean, open source is such an overloaded term. I mean,
True.
I don't know. I don't know what it's licensed under today, but I'm sure somebody will get the bright idea to change it to like SSPL, and then it'll die like Elastic's gonna die soon. So, I mean, I don't know. I was thinking about that. All that drama with Elastic, and I get the one side of like, especially if you're a contributor. I contributed this code, and now suddenly they're gonna relicense all the new versions, and a lot of that has my code in it. But at the same time, it's like, well, I mean, the existing versions are still there. But then the other side is like, well, if you're really worried about Amazon taking your service and selling it as a service, like maybe don't license it that permissively in the first place. I mean, maybe that's just me. I don't know. Like, because so far it seems like company goes and makes something open, like fully open source with an incredibly permissive license. It gets some traction. People like it. Then Amazon stands it up as a service. AWS stands it up as a service. Doesn't contribute back.
Right.
People get upset and they relicense it. Then all the users get upset about the relicense, and Amazon forks it anyway. So it's like, what's the point? Like, it feels like you could do so much better than by just not freely licensing it in the first place. Like, unless it's truly a hobby, or unless it's truly like a piece of software that you're not going to, that you're not worried about somebody capturing and reselling like that. Like, maybe just be less. Just be less permissive.
And I think the hardest. I think one of the hardest things about open source software is licensing.
Hey guys, I need to drop off.
All right, Christos, good to see you.
Yeah, good luck. Have fun. I'll join you later.
All right, see ya. So, and I say with licensing, it's understanding the right license for the right purpose for that product, right? And if it's MIT, well then you can take it, you can run with it, and adapt it, and make it your own, right? This one with Pulumi that I'm showing here, it's Apache 2.0. So, it's just a matter of understanding the right license for the right reason. So, but
yeah, it's hard. It's just, I don't know, because I don't really know what the right answer is, obviously, and it's I mean, you can be super cynical about it, right? And just like, just don't ever license anything, or don't ever permissively license stuff. But some of that permissive licensing is what gets people to the point that they're at, and or gets those products to the point where they are. And it's just a hard problem to solve. And I don't know if maybe the whole landscape has to shift these sort of dual licenses or whatever, or we try to get the OSI to start redefining what open source actually means. I don't know, but I don't know. I have a lot of sympathy for people who have contributed just to see their stuff get locked away, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, well, I mean, the rules are the rules right now, and maybe we should change the rules. I don't know. That's my personal opinion, which probably isn't popular.
Well, and the cool thing about Pulumi is that, and certainly everything that I'm going to show you is free. And because it's open source, it's free to run with. I wouldn't say it's free to fork and sell. I don't want to say that. But they do have a paid version. And as you're going to, we'll talk about this when we get there, talking about stacks. And that is, if I'm going to set this up, I've developed my architecture and I've got my script. But what if I'm one of a team of developers? And I need that information to be hosted on a server that's persisted, so that it's not just on my laptop. It's not just in one spot. It's more better maintained. And that's where Pulumi does have a paid version. So it's still, the use of Pulumi is free. The storage for your team and stuff, they have options, paid options for that.
That's cool.
So, all right, so now this is easy enough. You can Choco install Pulumi. Also, they do upgrades a lot, so you'll find yourself doing Choco upgrade Pulumi a lot. But that's actually really cool. They're constantly adding to it because Azure life, a year in Azure is like 7 years of our time, or is it the other way around? I don't know. So, I mean, they did this move so fast, right? Let alone all of the other cloud providers, with Google and AWS. There's so much going on. So Okay, so we've got this installed, and you have to have. Say, I'm going to do some C Sharp. So we got .NET Core 3.1 or later. So now they're getting support for 5 .NET 5. And you can simply come in here and set up, create new project. And again, you'll pick your language of choice. And it's literally as simple as Pulumi new. And you're going to pick your cloud. And I'll show you more of what this means in just a moment. And a language, -language there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then we get into stacks. And I'll show you this in just a moment. We'll go through it. I had created a brand new directory for us to run with. But I'm kind of showing off the docs because they're actually really, really helpful, and you're going to find yourself coming back to this a lot. So this is really great stuff. And let's see, there is cloud providers, and they're the core providers, not just cloud providers, but core providers. You got AWS, Azure AD, which I'm surprised is separate, Google Cloud, and then Kubernetes. But as well as they've got libraries for the Alibaba, Fastly, DigitalOcean, etc. Then you get into other really fantastic stuff such as Auth0 and Okta, RabbitMQ. So you can already build out some of your messaging architecture separately, and Docker. I'm sure Robert Tables. Yeah, I see him in chat. He's got his ears perked up already. So, and I do a lot with Docker as well. So this is really cool stuff. And Azure DevOps is an interesting one. I'm going to be honest, I have not delved into this one just yet. I still need to after I get some of the other projects I'm working on done. I can go on. Notice that we got database providers such as MySQL and Postgres. Now, you notice that SQL Server is not in here. It is here. They do have support for that. It's just in the Azure section and not... yes, it's not specific in this list, but you can do SQL Server.
Okay, cool.
As well as you can also build a virtual machine with SQL Server instance installed. You can do that. And again, I think I have an example that I might be able to at least point to here in just a moment. And monitoring providers. So you can also put into your script New Relic. So now you're feeding monitoring information to a provider. That's cool. And of course, like Akamai and Cloudflare. So now you get your more of the public network help right there. Then you get into things like random. This is going to be cool if you need to get a random item from. I'll give you a quick example. If this is a good example, this may not be a good example. Task run. Not even mentioning random. So let's skip that then. All right. Coming all the way down, API reference. This is where I'm going to jump into Azure. And these are all the modules for Azure. And so when we want to talk about compute, so when we build a virtual machine, we're going to come to compute. We're going to talk about virtual machine. Now this one, I think this is the one that's being deprecated in favor of Windows virtual machine and Linux virtual machine. And notice you can also do machine scale sets. So you can do repeated images, instances there. And, okay, so I'm just pointing this out that it's here. There's a lot here. And even authorization that we can maybe jump into a little bit later if we get some time. And Custos, so you can do with your log analytics, which is right here as well. You can set something up for your log analytics. Okay, so we've got a lot of modules. We're doing a lot of things inside Azure specifically, and inside here, let me just go back to compute. I'm going to grab virtual machine, and again, even in the examples here, you get your choice of languages: TypeScript, Python, Go, and C#. Now, the languages are going to be varied based on the examples that they have available. You notice that JavaScript's not here. Maybe that's a need for somebody to be a contributor and to help out.
Right.
So, but I can come in here and look and see, well, how are they doing this? And first thing they're doing is making sure there's a virtual network, a subnet, a network interface, and then the virtual machine. And we're going to go through this in just a moment. But the idea is that anybody can jump in quickly, get started, grab their pieces that they need out of this, and start understanding, like, all right, this is the location of my resource group name, so I know where to apply this network interface. And you notice then that this network interface has to be defined first so that you can apply it to the virtual machine.
So kind of on that. So like I guess if we think about
Yeah.
like ARM, right? ARM is very declarative. So ARM, we just say,
Yes.
depends on, and we have the, ARM kind of figures out, okay, well, you've got a network security group, and it's you can't attach a network security group to a NIC if the NIC doesn't exist yet. So we're not going to do that one. Like, does Pulumi does it do any of that work for you, or do you need to be explicit in the ordering of when you create what?
So you have to be specific in the order, and it's not so much of the order of creation. It's in the order of, and this is because of C sharp, right? If this virtual machine needs to leverage this network interface ID, then this instance needs to exist first.
Yeah, that makes sense. So sort of implied. It's implicit, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And now, and what's interesting, and don't let me forget, when we go to execute this, you're going to see that you do not debug this. You do not step through it. You don't set breakpoints and go, okay, my network interface was created. Now I'll go to the next piece. You can't do that. It's not meant for that. Instead, through the CLI, the Pulumi CLI, when we do Pulumi up, it's actually building the code. From the output of that code, it creates the other information based on Terraform and things. Then it's what sends that information to the Azure API, which I believe it's probably calling the REST API. And it's executing things in parallel. So and I've done this, I'm going to go set up, I need 20 virtual machines. It does not execute, all right, you'll build this virtual machine, now wait for it to be up. Okay, go to the next. It does all 20 on the fly in parallel. Fantastic. It worries about that. I don't have to worry about that. So I have done that. I've built a full large infrastructure, virtual network, subnets, 20 virtual machines, 6 Azure load balancers, other route tables, custom other things, and got it all all squared away, see exactly what I needed. I go to execute it. In 10 minutes, it's built and up and running.
It's awesome. So can I take
Yes.
the output of this? Like, is there output that I can use? Hey, thanks, Frank. Frank just brought a bunch of people over. Morning, everybody.
Hi, Frank.
Morning, afternoon, whatever it might be.
Welcome, Raiders.
Yeah, we've got Sean here talking about Pulumi and using Pulumi with Azure and, well, literally everything else. So anyways, I'm curious. So I've written my code to do my deployment. Can I export this in any like alternate format, like say an ARM template or something similar, or like is my code is it?
So I'm not 100% sure on the exporting of it. But I also don't know that you actually need to.
Okay.
Now, and I say that because you're going to want to keep it. The only reason you're going to go for something like C# is so that you don't have to understand all of the details about ARM,
Right.
ARM templates. And now I can also tell you that from personal experience that ARM templates start out as rather daunting.
Yeah.
But yeah, right. But after you get into it and realize it's just different sectioned pieces, you just got to remember that you can reference some blocks here and there, and you can actually do some functionality with it, such as concatenation and replace special characters and things like that. There are string functions. ARM templates are actually really powerful. So I don't know that you can export out of this, but for me, with doing a lot of the C#, I also don't have to worry about exporting it. And it's more of the source code is what you're going to want to put in a source code repository.
Yeah.
With your company, not the output. So
No, that's cool. That makes
go ahead.
sense. Yeah, I was just thinking like, I'm thinking, so the big advantage this has over stuff like, say, a Terraform or ARM or whatever is that, or even like what is it, Bicep is the ARM DSL. It's like I don't
Hmm.
have to go learn something. I don't have to go learn the semantics of a new language. Like that's so far as I can tell, that's the biggest advantage
Right.
for me is, well, I already build an app in C Sharp or in Go or JavaScript or whatever, and I can code my infrastructure in the same way, right? So
Yep.
is everything that's available in C Sharp, like, does this execute as like a C Sharp console app or some kind of a program, or is this closer to like a Unity style thing where I've written it, but it's like a limited subset of the language? Like, how much C Sharp can I actually write and get away with?
Okay. So, so you're bringing up multiple points, and for example, so first off, it is the full C sharp language.
Okay.
If you now, I would caution if you're like, well, while this is executing, I want to go and do an HTTP call out to another server to go grab what might be the latest resource group name to be used. I would caution against that.
Okay.
It's but there's also nothing preventing you from doing it. You just may not get the outcome that you want.
Okay.
So you see, it's the full library of C sharp. You get all the access to .NET Core 3.1 and above that you need. And I don't know why my camera's flipping out and screen. I actually I do that. I pixelate in real life every now and then. So that's just yeah.
Well, everybody remembers
You
my
know,
camera
sometimes it,
issues. I think there was a clip made of it, Bolt. So,
oh yeah, yeah. Nice, nice. Speaking of which, Bolt, can you scale config easily depending on an environment, such as a newbie VM or dev? Okay, can you scale the config? Yes, but you have to do it somewhat programmatically, and I will show you examples of that. I'll show you some of the things that I'll show you examples of some of the things that I've done. So back to the C sharp library. Yes, you get full access to the C sharp library. Nothing's cutting you down. There's nothing limiting there. The and I'm so curious what's making sure that I'm not dropping frames and such. Now, if you notice that in this example, first off, it's a basis, you have a class that's coming from a stack. A stack is part of the Pulumi library. We'll discuss that in just a moment. But you notice that inside this constructor is the entire setup of the virtual network, the subnet, the virtual machines, the storage disk, the OS profile, everything about it. It's not broken up into methods. Well, if you're going to have a large environment, you're going to want to do that. And so there are things when I have a list of subnets. So, like I say, in this example, they're only making one subnet. You have to have at least one, right, to execute any or to house any compute resources. But what if I got multiple subnets and I need to reference them later, and meaning that I'm going to have a section of my code, maybe it's a separate class or something, that it's the whole purpose is to build the virtual network exactly how I need it, build multiple subnets, and I'm going to explain just why you would do multiple subnets in just a second. But they're not immediately available. So I what I do is I have a list of T, right? So I'm gonna have a list of subnets that I can refer to later when I go out and build the other virtual machines and other resources that use them.
oh, cool. Okay.
So yeah, because if you think about it, this is C sharp, but this is when it's more like a script. And if you're thinking, well, I need to be clean coder, I want to do best practices, this is almost against it. But at the same time, it's not meant to, like I said, you're not going to step through this, you're not going to debug. So it's really kind of meant to be executed top down.
So when
But
you execute this, do you execute this like in an app and there's a Pulumi library, or does a Pulumi executable, interpret an assembly or something? Like how does it
yes.
actually execute?
Yep. All right. So let's go ahead and let's do some of that. So we're going to do Pulumi new. Let's do Azure C sharp, and hopefully I remember that correctly. Now, one of the things that we're going to have to do here in just a second is not only set up some details, but we're going to have to set up a service principal so that the Pulumi can act on our behalf to connect to our environment and build out these resources. And what you're going to see is that when I do Pulumi up, it builds, so it runs the .NET build, it builds the code, has the output. From the output, it creates what it needs to run the other part of the Pulumi library that actually goes and builds our resources. So I don't have to push any buttons in Visual Studio.
Right.
I just now I'll build just to make sure my syntax is good, something like that. But if I have a divide by zero error, I'm not going to find it until runtime. It's
right
until Pulumi tells me. Now that's another thing too. Let me show you this for just an example. Let's say I'm going to build a new subnet right here that's called internal. What if it already exists?
Yeah.
The library is not going to tell me that. The runtime execution of it will, and so you'll see a failure. So there's some things that it can help you with, there's some things it just can't. It's not going to go to your environment and do a comparison that says, oh, it already exists. I wasn't aware of it before, but I am now. It's not really meant for that. So it's...
Okay.
Yeah, you still have to be a little bit more hands-on regarding that.
So, like, getting a reference to an existing resource by name or something, like, that's not really what it's not intended to be used that way.
You can do that, and so let me see if I can find. So here we are. Here we're doing a create of the virtual machine. Here's the properties. Get you some good details of it. Now there is a method lookup in an existing virtual machine. You can do depending on the library and stuff, you'll do a get, and it will do it by name. So it will, if you know it's there and your code is expecting to be there and you need a reference to it, then you can code and say, let's do a get.
Okay, that's cool. Because I'm thinking of a case like, say I've got 4 or 5 VMs that I need to go deploy, and I'm going to deploy them into a virtual network. But like my networking team has already set up site-to-site VPN and that, and like I can't recreate the gateway, for example. I can't recreate the VNet. Like the VNet's already there, and getting a reference to that as opposed to having to create. So it looks like is a get available for most of the resources or all the resources or okay.
I'll quickly say. Most, just in case I'll be wrong if I said all, but yes, for most of to getting a resource group, to getting the virtual network, things like that. But the idea though too is you may have to be smart with your code and go, all right, let me go get that virtual machine. You said in your quick example, you said oh, maybe I got 4 or 5 virtual machines. Let me go get one by name. And then see if it exists. So you'll have to code for that. You'll have to code for and maybe handle an exception if it doesn't exist. And then say, all right, well, it doesn't exist. All right, let me go and build it. But if, let's say, for example, you have a coworker that put out another virtual machine, you didn't know about it. Pulumi's code doesn't know about it. It'll and you go and try to create one by that same name, it's going to say, look, it failed. It already exists. It's not going to already go out and try to soft hands protect you from that.
Sure. Yep. Do you have an option to override? Like nuke everything. If you find something, nuke it and replace it with my own. Okay.
No, like anything by Christos, he's gone. No, it doesn't. It doesn't do that. Now, there is a thing. Let me see if I can find it right quick, and that is right here. The custom resource options. Now, you mentioned about deleting it if it's there. What you can do is code and say, well, I do want you to, if it's there, and there's really not a method for delete the resource.
Okay.
Let me, yeah, let's get into some code, and I'm going to show you something where if I let's say, for example, I build out 3 virtual machines and I execute it and I got 3 virtual machines. Then I come back in and go, you know what? I'm just going to comment one out. One of the virtual machines in the code, I'm going to comment it out. Let's go rerun this. It's going to say, oh, okay, you want me to remove that virtual machine.
Okay. So it knows about that one because it had deployed it earlier, or because it's out there.
It's because it deployed it earlier.
Okay, because Bolt's asking about
Yes.
config drift too. So like,
Yes.
so the
That's the
fact that
thing.
Pulumi did it earlier, Pulumi knows that I deployed 3 VMs. But if I deployed 3 and then Bolt went out and deployed a 4th, it's not going to know about that unless I very explicitly
Correct.
say go and get, or whatever. So then okay, next question. Sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting you.
Yeah.
It's going to take
No, you're great. No, this is great.
It's gonna take 2 hours just to get past like the first 10 minutes of your stuff. But okay, so then because it's C#, right?
Yep.
Is it possible that I could use, say, the Azure management libraries or something to go and look at stuff myself, and then like maybe I queue that up to be deleted or something? Like when Pulumi executes, is it going to execute the other code that's in the assembly, or is it only kind of looking at its own stuff that it cares about?
So, as Bolt mentions, the config, and that's when we get into dealing with a lot with Azure and maybe other cloud providers have this thing, it's called desired state config.
Yeah.
What you're coding to is the end result. What do you want it to end up? When I'm done executing, what do you want it to look like?
Okay.
So if you build, I don't know why my screen's freaking out. If you build, say, 3 VMs, Bolt puts out another virtual machine, you don't know about it, your code doesn't know about it. Now, the fact that it's in the same resource group, the fact that it's there, nothing's going to get hurt unless you try to create a virtual machine by the exact same name.
Right. Okay.
Which turns into that Azure Resource ID, right? Which is that the subscription ID to the to your resource group, right in your compute, and then your virtual machine resource ID. If those match, then you're going to have that conflict. But if Bolt puts out another virtual machine, you build out another one, you're not aware of his, it's not going to remove it just because it exists.
Okay. So like, I'm thinking of the ARM, because ARM is what I've sadly had to use the most. ARM, we say we've got like incremental and complete deployments, and a complete deployment is if it's here, then update it. If it's not, create it. And if it's there and if it's there and I don't, and it doesn't exist, or I'm sorry, if it's there and it doesn't exist in my template, then time to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you'll see that this is meant for that desired state. What do you want it to look like at the end? Now, you'll see also that if, all right, I'm done, I want to go and nuke everything, you can do a Pulumi destroy, and it will say, all right, well, everything I created, let me rephrase, everything that I know about, I will go and destroy. And if it says, if it knew that it created a resource group and that's in the list to be destroyed, if that other VM that it is not aware of, and it's in that same resource group, it's going to be deleted. Because it's deleting the resource group.
Oh, well, sure, right, because it's deleting the resource group. Yep,
Yes.
okay. So the only way Pulumi knows about a resource one of two ways. It creates it, or I've done a get, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And which you don't want to go and get the world just to identify it. And,
Right.
right. And so instead, then, since resource groups are free, then it's part of your architectural decisions then to go, well, all right, this resource group, these are the resources that is going to be maintained by code, that infrastructure as code. If Bolt says, well, I need another virtual machine, then go create another resource group that's outside of it, or let it be managed by
Right.
the Pulumi script.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, these are fantastic questions.
So it's a human human problem to solve, not a technology problem to solve.
Exactly that. And I was pointing out too that something you can do is custom resource options. And inside here, I wish this is going to give you the far bigger, more API level type layout. But one of the things that you can do in here, such as delete before replace, but there is another one. Let me see if I can find it right quick. Maybe I picked a bad example.
My import ID looks neat though.
Let's see.
Pull in the state of an existing resource. Oh, interesting. Cool. Sorry, I'm distracting you.
No, you're good. No, you're good. And well, and you're pointing out, but again, you have to know about it. Your code has to know that it exists, and you're trying to, in a sense, bring it into the fold.
Yeah.
This is okay. So in this one example is not showing me what I want. I will show you a better example in just a bit. There's a way that I can say, like, I'm building out a virtual network. When I go to destroy it, I don't want that virtual machine. I don't want that virtual network destroyed. And that way, you're kind of protecting it.
Oh, okay.
So what if I have a resource? What if I have a resource group and virtual network, subnets, things like that, and I go build out my virtual machines? Bolt puts a virtual machine on there, on the maybe through the portal into that same area, that same resource group, and one of the subnets. I go to destroy things. I can say, don't destroy the resource group. Do not destroy the virtual network. Do not destroy the subnets. Just destroy maybe the virtual machine, the resources that
Right.
I have. So, are you likely to use this in a dev environment? Well, I would be cautious, and maybe that's where you're going to use multiple resource groups for that, because that dev environment is going to be more fluid. It's changing more often than it does in production. So this is more for building out that test environment, that production environment, and the replicating your needs there, like I said, to other Azure regions, for example.
Yeah.
So,
That's cool.
okay. Let's see, what else can I get in trouble with? Okay, so let's go ahead and build this out. All right, so I got a project name. Let's just do 425. We're just going to take some basic things. Now, here's what we have as a stack name. Now, when we were talking about this earlier, that desired config, desired state config, this is that way of Pulumi knowing of the state of what it built. And a kind of, that was a terrible example, or definition. Let me see if I can do a better job. Let's say that I've got a dev, and I don't know why my screen share's freaking out like that on Twitch. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't see it in the
All right.
preview, but I see it on here. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's a me problem.
I'm not sure. Okay, so yeah, I like how Robert Tables put it. You got to reduce the blast radius. Yes, you got to be careful and cognizant of that. Okay, so when we say a stack, and let's say that we're going to do, I mean, it's easy enough to do dev, but let's do dev dash central US. Okay, just to pick one.
Okay.
And now this is a passphrase to protect the config secrets, because it's still going to do some um, protection behind the scenes. So let's do something super secret. Please don't tell anybody. 425 show. Okay. And let's repeat that. 425 show. All right, good. And now, no, wait a minute. I just gave it. I re-entered it. It took it, and now it says enter it. Well, that's because it's kind of like, all right, great. You changed your password. Now I need you to log back in.
Yeah.
Using your new password. But there's something else that you can do too. It says set the Pulumi config passphrase, or you can use a file. Now, what I've done is used it's an environment variable. You know, I'm on Windows at the moment, but you can do this in Linux as well. And this is the way of storing that passphrase so that I'm not prompted every single time. If you don't store it, then it's kind of protection, because then only those who know this passphrase can actually execute
Okay.
your setup. Right? All right. So now, this is already bringing up a topic that this is one thing I don't like. Magic strings. You're going to see a lot of them.
Okay.
You have to know what to put in there. So you can't just put in US-central- something like that. It does not work. So you're going to have to find that information, know exactly what to put in. So
it's a Pulumi specific magic string. Not like, there are a lot of like Azure magic strings, like East US2, all lowercase, that sort of thing. Like, does it take those, or are these Pulumi specific?
This is not Pulumi specific. That is, and will get compared to what Azure's aware of.
Okay.
So, if I was doing AWS, then it would be expecting something like US East -1 or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
I forget, but so it is taking that string and will use it against the Azure library, or when it executes to the API.
So now I've got another question while that's coming up. So
yeah.
So it's code, right? So it's just, it's code. So then
Yep.
What about things like derived types? Like, imagine my network guys say, "Hey, we've built your, VNet with the right NSGs and blah 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 blah," and then can you derive from that? Like, could you start with a base essentially, and then instead of rewriting it or copying and pasting it in, like, derive your stack from a Contoso stack or something like that? I mean, I'm sure we're getting into things that are like completely off the rails, but
yeah, and on that I'm not sure.
Okay.
Now, can you inherit from a class in when we finally get this up and going? If my screen will stop freaking out. I have no idea why it's doing that on Twitch. It's fine here, and it's fine in the preview, but yeah, that's weird. Okay, so I would caution you to, if you're going to make a class that inherits from such as a virtual machine class, the Pulumi is, it's going to execute that code. I don't know that it's actually going to look at your derived classes,
right,
and see that output. I haven't tried that, so I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
So I'd be careful doing that. Now, but I'd also say that if you're like, well, I really want to extend it, it's open source.
True. Yeah.
You can do that yourself. You can, if you want to fork and run with it, that's one thing, or maybe you find, you clone it, you adapt, and this thing's kicking butt, and you go and be a contributor. Yeah, that I would probably suggest that route first. Okay. Now, let me I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's launch yet another Visual Studio, because when you're running OBS and you're streaming, nothing better than running 3 instances of Visual Studio. But to help save on this, I'm not running Chrome. So I
But do you have Teams
I,
open? Because Teams is like Chrome X10.
I actually do have Teams open. Yes.
Yeah.
And I can actually probably chat with you. I'm on a lot of the Microsoft stuff for being an MVP. Okay, let me go and I want to open up an existing project or solution. And yes, I could use code. I know that, but I'm not. Okay, where did I put this thing? All right, I put it in, let's see, projects. At least I think I did because there's, oh, it's in D drive. Okay. Come on. Come on. There's nothing like being live to show all off. There we go. Your all your code, your files and secret stuff. Okay. All right. So let me, once this thing decides to load, and sometimes like a minute. So when I ran this first Pulumi setup, one of the reasons it took a little while is actually my antivirus decided to pop up a window on another screen that says, I need to look at that. And it's getting in the way. But no, it actually does not take very long at all to create a new project in Pulumi and run. Okay, so now we have everything popping up. We got stuff running in the background that doesn't need to be there. So let's open up a couple of things.
Uh-oh, I see YAML.
Once the yes, there's a touch of YAML, and thankfully not much. But
Okay.
well, yeah, it's a YAML file, but I'm going to show you where that the settings in that YAML file are fantastic for you. So first thing is, it's a class program, and it's a main. It's just that's it, and it runs asynchronous. This class is called MyStack. So you look at MyStack. Now, this is what it built for me. As soon as I said, new Azure C#, this is your default project. So it's already saying, all right, let's go create a new resource group. Let's create a storage account. I'm going to expose the connection string, and it has a type of output. So it's a public property, but you notice with the output attribute, if I go run this right now, and I did miss a small step, so I'm going to step back in just a second, and we're going to put in a service principal. But this would not only build the code and run it, it would build the resource group, then build the storage account inside this resource group by name. And again, we got magic strings, so you kind of have to know what's going on here. And now, thankfully, their IntelliSense, they do provide a lot of the those strings that are acceptable. But I also don't like that. So one of the things I've done in the past, and I'll see if I can show an example, I just built my own file of constants. So I've got the storage replication types of LRS, a local replication or global replication. The other ones, etc. It counts here. Is it standard or premium or basic, and what are the acceptable ones for this type? So there are a lot of pros and cons on this. I said there's a lot more pros than cons. There are some cons. You don't know this is a storage account, except for how it's used. So the other thing too, as soon as I add and say, well, I want to create a user account, right? I'm going to talk with some Azure AD. Then this type has to be more declarative. You have to be very specific as to the type of account. All right, so let's jump over to, because I do need to do a little setup. We're going to go to my subscription, and I am going to do a little faux pas only because I did not have time to do a lot of prep on this. So obviously I'm doing a lot of things on the fly. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new registration. So I went to Active Directory, App Registrations, do a new registration. Actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Yes, I can do that. I can give it a name. I'm going to say that's single tenant just because I am in my particular case. But yeah, and JP, you're certainly far more the expert than I am as far as service principles
Yeah.
regarding
Yeah, I mean,
multi-tenant and external.
we've talked a lot about multi-tenancy in some shows. We've done a couple, but typically it's a multi-tenant app in Azure AD, and it's more of an app like service principal in this case. It gets a little bit murky, but
Yeah.
a multi-tenant app or multi-tenant service principal in Azure AD is a way to allow the entire ecosystem of Azure AD to sign into an app. So, if you're building an app, say that you're going to turn around and sell, if you're building like a SaaS app or something like that you're going to sell, that is a good case for multi-tenancy, because instead of just people in your org, for example, like people you work with, people you go to school with, instead of just those people being able to sign in, which is single tenant, multi-tenant means that if you write me an app or you build an app and I go sign up, I can sign in with work, and you don't have to do that. You don't have to treat me any differently. Like, you don't have to write code specifically because you sold this to Microsoft, or specifically because you sold it to, Contoso as the developer. You just allow anybody to sign in, and then your app figures out, what do I do with you now that I know who you are? So when you're creating a service principal, in almost all cases, they're single tenant, because there's a whole other discussion around single tenant or around service principals and Azure AD app registrations, but essentially, single tenant is fine.
Yeah, and that's a good explanation. And I look forward to the day that I can actually have software that I can sell to Microsoft. I look forward to that. All right, so I already have a service principal called SP underscore. It's preference on naming, right? But Pulumi. And now what you might do is name this so that it's more descriptive of what its purpose is for. Now, for me, this is wide open. It's not going to be that terrible. But if you're in a more of a production environment, you want to do maybe your Pulumi service principal for your test environment versus your production environment. And the reason why is that this service principal, given these rights, you can help by service principal narrow that down so that the principal used to create the test environment cannot alter the production environment. It helps protect you from yourself and those accidental 2 a.m. I got to go fix something type issue, right?
Yep.
Okay. So, all right. So what I'm going to do is I've already deleted my secrets. I did that last night. So I'm going to create a new secret. Let's just do it for a year. And this is where I'm an expert at doxing myself. So I am going to try to learn from that behavior. And all right, so let me go and create, and well, it's actually masked anyway, but let me go to, where did I do this? Okay. Now, I'm like I said, I'm going to use some environment variables. So one of the things I'm doing is with that service principal, I've got which is that client ID. I'm going to put in the client secret, and then it ties to, but I'm also supplying the ARM, the ARM, which is the Azure Resource Manager, the tenant ID, and the subscription ID. Notice as well that this is where I'm setting that Pulumi config passphrase, and this is so that I don't have to type it in every time. Just depends on your environment.
Right.
I'm doing this by myself. I just go ahead and plug it away. I don't have to type it in every time. And if you forget, well, it's there in your batch file. If you're in a multi-developer area, you probably don't want to cache that or store that. You probably want to force them to do that so that your other developers on other teams can't just jump in and cause you to have problems. So, okay, now let me take that off screen. Let me go grab that service principal by secret and get that plugged away. I don't think somebody could really do too much with it, given that I'm not going to allow this to run too long. But
Now, can it
Just
run
in
as
case.
you at all? Like, if I don't want to create a service principal, can I just run this as myself, like with my own context, or?
So one of the things that you can do is if you already have it set up, you can run it as far as you, yes, using your AZ CLI.
Okay, cool,
So
cool, cool.
yes, and so now there's both a danger in that, right?
For
If
sure.
if I'm the owner of that subscription and I'm using my AZ credentials, then I've got open access.
Right.
So let's do that. I'm gonna set this up and let me make sure too that I've got the right ID in place and set that up. Okay. Let me just double check a couple of things, only because I tried to hide a few things so that it's not uh, terribly easy to dox myself. And as much as my screen screws up on Twitch, I don't know that I've got reason to worry about.
Nobody's gonna get your secrets anyway. Well, I tried like
Yeah,
I tried reloading it and then tried a couple different things, but nothing seems to be making it better. So I don't know, but it's weird because I don't see it in the preview. I only see it in the thing itself. So I hope we can get it sorted.
Yeah. All right. So let me do this. Let me do file save as. Now, where did I do this? See if I can do this as quickly as possible. Okay. All right. And yeah, let's do this right quick. Hopefully I'm setting up my credentials properly. Good deal. And sound like an airplane took off behind you.
Oh, my heater came on, I think, in my office. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. I just teasing, just teasing. Okay. All right. So now, I've created the service principal. I put it in my batch file just so I can have environment variables. Now, obviously, if I run, I'm in Windows, right? So if I run set and I show all of my environment variables, they're not hidden. So they're still, in that respect, you might be better off to use your AZ CLI credentials, but have different credentials so that you've got your God access versus your narrowed access, right?
You're right.
All right, so let's do Pulumi up. And what we're really going to do is it's going to build that resource group called the wonderful name of resource group and create a storage account. But here's the cool thing. So you notice I executed Pulumi up. It's not building anything just yet, which is fantastic. And again, because I'm streaming right now, there's a lot going on. It's taking a little extra time. But what this is doing is it's running the .NET build behind the scenes, and from that, it's building out the other necessary information it needs. Here in just a second, it's going to ask you if it should continue. Oh, and my antivirus popped up saying it needs to evaluate. I swear I'm going to get a different antivirus just because of that. All right, so okay, interesting. Apparently somebody else is doing 425 dev COS or something because the URN is not. Okay, well, let's do that then. See, I really don't like that because it really is. It should be specific to my environment that I'm using, right? My tenant,
Yeah.
my subscription.
So it's a Pulumi URN, it looks like?
Yeah, it said duplicate resource,
Huh.
but this is brand new, so it really. Now, all right, let's just tell you what. Let's make no changes. Let's just double check this. Get past my antivirus problem there. And if we need to change something, we'll change something.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So a little different error here, saying that it's problem with my. Looks like my service. Oh, JP. Oh, does I sound like Christos yet? JP. Okay.
Getting close.
You know what I forgot to do
Give your
is I. Yes.
give it any rights.
My so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and do something that is not good practice, so I want to say be careful of this. Just for this example, this service principal is going to be given rights at the subscription level. Don't do that. Instead, you should let me go ahead and give role assignment here, and I'm going to give contributor access, not owner, but I will give contributor access so that it can build the resources. And there we go. There's my service principal. Let's save. And oh, the role assignment already exists because the service principal already existed.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, that's true, and I can recreate it if need be, and it's already a contributor.
Okay. Is it the same one
Then-
that you just created?
It's the same one. I just changed the key, but it's the same service principal.
Oh, have you run it before on this machine? I wonder if there's like a cache in there. It's got something old. It hasn't picked up the new. Credentials that you just added.
Okay, all right. So let's do that. Then I'm gonna go back to app registrations. Let's go create a new one just so that we can get through this. Let's do Pulumi 425 and single tenant register. And let me take it off screen just so that my key. Okay. And also means that I need to update my batch file here. So that way I can update my key to that service principal. All right, so let me go to certificates and secret, create a new secret. Let's call it 425 show.
You want to take a quick break
Let's
while you're getting
add-
your service principal squared away? Right, get some coffee, drink, restroom, the whole thing.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
I forgot. Yeah, it's already at the top of the hour.
Yeah.
Man, the time's flying.
I know.
Time's
All right.
fun when you're having flies.
Well, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back in less than 5 minutes. Maybe less than 5 minutes. I hope so. But we'll be back in just a couple minutes. And join the Discord and join us in the chat, too, if you'd like. Be back in just a minute. Oh, Christos is back, too.
Wow.
All right, good. Well, good. The perfect time to take a break. We can get him back in, and we'll be all good. So, cool. See you in a few. All right, everybody, we're back. And look who's joined us. We're in the presence of a celebrity. So anyway, okay.
I'm not worthy.
I'm here to fix your problems. What is it? Let me know.
And then
I'm on fire now.
And then Christos came back. So anyway,
Well, wait a minute. We didn't have this issue until he came back.
True. I might as well go. How about that?
so while we were gone, we did get a request to go back to the previous music. So I'm gonna try to switch we'll switch back to the previous music for next week. So my apologies that it isn't any good. Okay, so let's look at this error that we're getting. So this is saying, let's see, blah blah blah, error building account, error getting authenticated object ID, and then error listing service principals, which is an interesting thing that it's trying to do. So it's doing an unauthorized client. So it says, let's see, blah blah blah. But what's interesting about this is that if you look at that request, that https graph.windows.net GUID blah blah blah, that's almost as if it's trying to. I wonder what else Pulumi is doing, because it almost seems like it's trying to query graph for to get a list of service principals, which would be a somewhat abnormal thing for it to be doing,
Right.
and would require more permission. So while we're here, let's go try a couple things to see if we can't sort this out. So when you do Pulumi up,
Yeah.
it builds the code and then it goes and tries to create a resource group. And I'm curious why it's saying that. But for the moment, let's go back to your. Actually, you know what? Do you have the Azure CLI installed?
I do.
Who doesn't?
Right?
Let's
Right?
do.
So when I did AZ login, it's logged in. You know, it gives me the prompt, right? It says, "Well, which account are you?" Excuse me. And I chose the account that I know is tied to that subscription.
Right.
So now that account though also is the owner of that subscription.
Sure. So we don't want to do it as
So-
that, right?
Right.
Let's create a service principal here. We're gonna let's do create for RBAC. So it's AZAD SP create dash, I think it's create dash for dash RBAC.
Yes.
Yep.
And then-
with a C, not a K, because I was doing it on my session. Like, why is it not working? Anyway.
What do you? Well, you're from
C for Christos.
You're from
Yeah.
GREEKE, right? Isn't that where you came from?
K-E? What?
Well, because it's Greek. Well, it's Greek with a K, or we could do.
I'm from Greekland.
So do a create for our
Better
back.
than Greaseland?
Yeah, they're from Greekland.
Okay.
Yeah.
So create for RBAC. I believe there's also a name parameter we can give it. Let me check just to make sure. So we can do. Is it name? Is it dash dash name? Let's see. Create for RBAC. Yeah, do a dash dash name.
Or dust
Okay.
N, I think. But
And-
go.
And then you can do a. I believe. Let's do a.
SDK auth, dust SDK auth, because I think you need that one, right?
Well, that shouldn't matter because we'll still get the same stuff back. SDK auth will give us extra data if you want to use that. So it's dash SDK dash auth AUTH.
Well, if you create a service principal without doing dust SDK auth, the GitHub Actions, for example, don't work. So I think there's a slight difference there.
Well, I think it's mostly in how the data gets spit back out.
Oh, is that
and
the
the
only
GitHub
difference? Okay.
the GitHub Actions expecting extra data that SDK auth is going to give it. And then the other thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and give it a role. So let's give it contributor on your subscription, just like yours is today. And so to do that, it's dash role, and then just contributor.
Now, code, no nitpicking here, but why are you not using Windows Terminal, man? You can do Control plus plus, it will do the zooming for you,
Oops.
It's fine.
I-
For next time.
I don't know. I needed to give you something to argue with me about. So
Okay, I take
it's kind of like when you're in the military, your CO comes in for inspection. You always give them something to find so they makes them feel better about themselves.
I feel so much better for myself now. I contributed quite well. Thank you.
Okay, take rollout for the moment.
Okay.
We're just going to use the default. So take rollout and just hit enter.
The default
And
is
then-
contributor to your whole subscription, so just be
Okay.
careful when you do that, folks.
Okay.
So now we're going to get the. So this is going to create a contributor role assignment to that scope, so this is almost identical to what you created earlier. So it's going to run through
Okay.
So copy this out,
Okay.
and there's a secret there, so you're going to want to delete this
Yeah.
later.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But so let's use that. Let's use these values in your batch file, and let's see if we set those environment variables, if that'll sort it out.
Come on. Oops. Helps if I can be smarter than the UI. The other reason, Christos, is I've been playing with Windows Terminal, trying to do some customized settings and stuff, and it looks terrible at the moment because I'm terrible at doing it.
Scott Hasselman has a
okay,
nice one if you want
so-
to follow his setup.
Yes, and I actually was, and apparently I cannot read. So, all right. So now I set the environment. Let's do Pulumi up. Let's try that one. And this is actually the first time that I've hit that issue. And it has worked before on that same tenant and subscription, so Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. We may have missed. There may have been a step that we missed in making sure it had the right permissions, or that extra scope is kind of strange. Like that, it would need to go query the service principals that way. I don't know why it's doing that, but
Yeah. Either way,
we've got
we
the
have
correct
made
access now.
progress.
So,
We
yep.
got progress.
Yes. Okay.
There you go.
Yes, this is fantastic. So this is what I wanted to point out a second ago is, well, several minutes ago. This is, so it has built the code and it has determined based on that code. Remember that code is that desired state of what it believes it needs to happen. It's going to create a resource group
Okay.
and it's going to create a storage account. I can say, by default says, no, I don't want to perform this update, but that way I can at least see what is it doing? What is it intending to do, right? One of the things I can do is go down to details and it will tell me exactly what it's going to do. Notice things like resource group name is resource group because that's the way it is in the code, and random characters to help make it unique. Well, I'm not in favor of that, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit no.
Who doesn't like random characters?
Right?
Right.
So I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to add a new resource group args. Okay. And one of the things that I'm going to do is, if I could type correctly here, let's put this into here.
I'm so late into the game, but I assume this is the wrapper around the API properties, right? So we can have all the properties are available to resource group via the SDK. Yes.
It is. It's the ability for me to leverage the language of my choice. With respect, I mean that. Like TypeScript, JavaScript, Python, Go, and C#.
Yep.
And this allows me to, using that language to define what I want to have created when it runs at runtime. One of the things I mentioned earlier is that you cannot set breakpoints and you cannot step through this. If you do, you're not going to get what you think you are. I can't just put a breakpoint, here and say, okay, great, my storage account is here. Do I want to step back? It won't do that.
Right.
Notice that the resource group is here. It's named because it's leveraged here. What if I commented all of this out? Notice that resource group is never used. It will still get created.
Gotcha. Okay.
It doesn't have to be leveraged by C# to be created. You can do it. I mean, for that matter, I could do that, and it would still create the resource group. The only reason for having a variable is so I can leverage it in in the building of other resources.
Yeah, gotcha. Nice.
And that's where the C# comes in versus that. In fact, let me go ahead and save. One of the things I'll do with Visual Studio is, I'll create a solution file. Good Lord. I forgot to pay the demo gods. Sacrifice a MacBook or something.
Not the new ones, obviously. Too expensive.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, so now you notice that I saved the file, but sometimes I will run and I'll build it in Visual Studio just so that I can double check for errors and things like that. But it doesn't do anything until the Pulumi product itself is going to build it, and then it's looking at the output and seeing what needs to happen from there out of the output of that.
Nice.
Okay, so you notice that the resource group name earlier was resource group and some random characters. The fact that I specified a name here in the resource group arg says, okay, we're gonna name it this and leave it alone.
Is that not a reserved name?
Not
resource group?
No.
Huh.
So
If it is, we'll find out in a minute. It's not.
So it says that there's this permalink to a JSON file, and is that JSON file how Pulumi knows what it has and hasn't deployed? Like, because we talked a lot about,
Yes.
what it's going to delete, what it's going to keep, etc., and it's things that it knows about. So I guess I could. Well, I guess if I've got the code, there's not really a whole lot of reason to share the JSON file, unless is what's in that JSON file very specific. Like I deployed resource ABC, and so resource ABC in Azure equates to resource group in the code. Like if I just have the code, is that enough for me to run this on multiple machines and have everything that's there be known about it correctly, or do I also need that JSON file?
Well, so
okay. I guess that answers my question.
yeah. There is stuff stored, and I'm looking to see if I can find that specific detail, because the answer is yes. There is stuff that is. Oh, I just got to see if I can find it, because they're meant to be tucked away and where you can't find them. Okay, this thing is not working, so let me bail on. Okay. Let me switch gears on that. So there is someplace, there is a way. Now, I'll tell you what, we're going to revisit those files in just a moment. And because it's technically not built anything.
So we don't have anything in Azure yet, right?
Right, exactly. And in fact, let's show that. Here's my list of resource groups, and I just have my RSG foo that I made some time ago with nothing in it. I was doing something else. So, all right. So now I want to say yes. You notice that when I went to details, now the resource group name is without any random characters, so that I can double check. I can see what it's going to do. I can see if there's default values that I maybe forgot to apply, such as enable HTTP traffic only. Well, the default is true. If maybe I needed to set that to false, I can see what those settings are going to be. So you'll want to look at details every now and then. So, all right, so let me say yes. And it's going to go and build that resource group, build that storage account. And remember that there's an output. There's a public property with a output attribute, and this is going to be shown in the screen when it's built. Notice it says creating now, and if I can get Twitch does not like my screen. All right, so in resource group creating doesn't take very long. Boom, it's created. It takes a lot longer to delete it than to create it. Now it's allocating a storage account. Now, while I'm thinking of it, if let's say I'm going to build a virtual machine and I want to build a big one, and say it's got 16 virtual CPUs and say 64 gig of RAM, Pulumi is not going to know if you have gone beyond your quota.
Right. It's just going to bomb.
So it will fail at the runtime. And so that's when you've got to be more aware of the output of this. Okay, so speaking of output, permalink, connection string. Oh, I like that secret.
So what's in that JSON file now?
All right, we'll open that in just a second. So now if I refresh, now I've got my resource group called resource group. It's in Central US, where the location of the stack was set. You can change that, but because I did not specify a different region, it used the one off of the stack. Now I go into the resource group here. You see my storage account right there.
Cool.
All right, so
Nice.
it built. And okay, so now let me go back into that guy right here. Let me open this up. Okay, now JP, this is what you were wanting to know. Because now that dev-cus JSON file now has, you notice that it has the salt to the passcodes, right? That's why I need a passphrase to work with the secrets provider.
Mm-hmm.
And it has the resources that it built. Here's the storage
Can
account.
you zoom in?
and the
Can
connection
you zoom in
string.
one click?
Oh
Or
yeah.
two?
Let's do. Yeah. Excuse me. All right. So you notice, like, here's the resource group in Central U.S. and here's the subscription, right? And the full ID for it. And let's see what other things can we discern from here. There's the storage account. So you notice that it's a JSON file. It's not ARM template.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it is the details. Now, the other thing too is this is the details of what it created, not the details of what it was going to create. Meaning this is the after the effect, after the execution of the creation.
So then
Why does that matter?
So this file is the thing
Good.
that drives what Pulumi knows about, right? Like how we talked
Yes.
about earlier. So this file, I would possibly want to. Would I check this into source code? Like if I had multiple people managing an environment?
No, because I can go right now and take this whole section, this entire section about storage account.
Mm-hmm.
If I remove that out of this file and save it, then Pulumi is now thinking, oh, it doesn't exist.
Right.
When
Okay.
it does.
Right.
Think of that as that's the state. That's the end result of the state of what it made.
Right. Okay. So this is the state file, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. This is instead of a database of what happened, it's in a file.
And that's just
And
local.
let's
It's not stored like in a Pulumi service or anything like that. It's just a local file.
So the way that I'm using it, it's in my user Sean.Pulumi stacks folder right there.
Okay, cool.
So it is local to me. Now remember though that I'm the solo developer that's doing stuff from home, etc. I'm not on a team. If you needed to do team-based things so that those things are saved off, then that's when we're going to get into that paid setup with Pulumi and let them house. Then they house this info for you, so that state and is stored so for the team itself. Okay, now we've done that. We've got our storage account available for us. One of the things we're going to do now is what happens if I simply, and let's see, let's just go and comment it out. Simple enough. I'm going to save it, and I go to Pulumi Up. And so it's going to rebuild that code. It's going to look at the output and say, what needs to occur? And this is where it's doing a comparison against that JSON file of the last known state. And it's going to make a list of changes.
I have a question here. Right.
Absolutely.
With Terraform, you have a distributed backend store that stores the state of your deployment outside your local machine. Is that available to Pulumi as well? So can you say, please output that file in some random permalink location, like data storage or something else that can be pulled at the time that you're compiling the code?
I'm not entirely sure. My thinking is that that's part of that paid option that Pulumi provides.
Ah, okay.
And now I could be wrong on that, and hopefully somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's more for that. If it needs to be stored beyond you, then it's either your responsibility to do it, or you're going to go into that paid model that Pulumi offers.
Right. So there's a way to override the permalink that Pulumi is looking into?
Yeah, that I don't know yet.
Okay. Cool.
I don't know. In fact, I can tell you too that this is a recent change. In I think a couple of months ago, this was not listed here.
Oh, interesting.
You'd actually have to go find it. So this is actually a new change to them actually showing you where that's at.
Okay.
So now I seem to remember, like, so when we had a couple folks come on to talk about Terraform, that Terraform does some sort of like almost like an import or like an examination of what's out there. So you could say like, hey, go look at
Yes.
this resource group or something,
Yep.
and pull that in. And so like, could I do something like that with Pulumi? Like I'm thinking if I'm on a team or something, I'm before I go and run something, I want to go like I've got the code. So hey, go in and I'm pretty sure my buddy deployed at this resource group or whatever before.
There's
So
there's one caveat for
there-
Terraform before we go into Pulumi. So Terraform, in order to be able to
Yep.
do that, it needs to have the store file somewhere or the state file stored somewhere before you deploy the resources. So if you were to point Terraform into an existing resource group today and say like go and deploy these, or I've done a change, it wouldn't know what the previous state was. So it doesn't do it dynamically when you write a new file. You need to own the beginning and all the other steps and be part of Terraform. Otherwise, it won't work. So that's something that I wonder if Pulumi can do, for example. That's what JP is asking.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. Like, I think I'm learning that most of these like infrastructure as code tools are just they're good for 70% of the work, but they're like I don't know. They all seem to have like one or two big like things that inhibit productivity. I don't know. It's hard to describe exactly. I don't know. What? Yeah. So yeah, but that's essentially like it looks like you can do a refresh right here, right?
So yes, and this is going to. So let's go ahead and do that. Refresh. And in fact, I don't know if there's anything extra. Yeah, I guess I can compare it to a config file. Display the operation as a rich difference, showing overall change. I could also, I guess, expect no changes and return an error if there are any. This is going to be so. Well, all right, let's do that. Let's go back to here. I'm going to say that this is back the way it was. And
Oh, nice.
leave that
So
there.
Pulumi allows you to import existing resources that were created outside of Pulumi. Nice.
Yeah, and I haven't done that, so depending on the amount that you need to do, that might be tricky. Okay, so I'm putting my code back. So it's basically the code matches the current state. There's a resource group and there's a storage account. Okay. So my state, and since I haven't re-executed this, if I go to here and I go ahead and delete, no, not you. Part of the problem being zoomed in. I'm going to go ahead and delete this storage account. And yes, that's...
And while Sean is doing this one, there is a distributed backend for Pulumi.
Awesome.
That link doesn't work, Christos.
What? Oh, sorry. I don't know why it was... Yeah, okay. I'll fix it. Thanks, JP.
Okay,
Bus
so notice
publication.
that I deleted the storage account through the portal, but not... but the state file is still thinking it's there.
Right.
All right, so now let's do a Pulumi refresh. And let's see what happens. I do think, if I remember correctly, this is going to go out and say, well, wait a minute. Do you want to perform this refresh? Let's see what this is going to do. No reforces, just your... Okay. Notice that. So let me get off of the weird DOS issue there.
So this is going to pull down the state and update your state file, but your code itself is still going to stay the same, right? Because your code, I guess, is sort of the source of truth. And
exactly.
You're going to update state so that you're in a position where
Yeah.
your code reflects, or where your code at least knows what the current state is. So if you're in multiple engineer mode, right? then you get into a place where, say you and I were on a team, and I pulled down, and you've got the Pulumi code itself, not the C#, not the state files or anything. You've got that checked in.
Yeah.
That would mean, in theory, I could do like a refresh, for example, Pulumi refresh, and pull the current state of the resource group towards and then my code now has current state of what's been deployed, but then of course the code itself of what I'd like to have deployed or have available.
Right. You can still have a disconnect between I removed that storage account manually. I didn't do it through code. Now I did the refresh, and now it says, yes, I want it to go ahead and update my state file. I'm going to say reload this, and you now notice that my storage account has been removed from the state file.
Yeah, there's a lot of pixelation there. JP, is that you or is that Sean?
It's been going on all day. I don't know what it is.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, and it's I on the preview window I don't see it. It's so it updated the state file, but it's not going to update the code. So now if let's just leave this as is with my code, and I go, let's do Pulumi up. Now it's going to compare code to that state file and say, oh, there's a storage account to be created. So I'm not sure if that answers your quandary at the moment, but
I think it does. I mean, I guess ultimately, I'm just trying again. And Christos found, I guess there's some docs on distributed backends. Like you can buy a service or you can do it yourself, and maybe that's the better team way to do it. Like just let the state be distributed by default. But it also seems like if you and I were working together, that we would be able to, especially small team kind of a thing. If we don't want to stand up a back end, or if we were rolling through different stages. It looks like at least that I could regenerate the state, and all I need to do that is the code and access to the resource group.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so now I'm going to get things caught up, and the storage account will be created, and the state file updated. And then all is right with the world again.
Very nice. It's great. They can go back and forth. Right. It's and you can do what ifs like PowerShell, right? What if, and it will output everything.
Yeah,
I like it.
Now, I will say this too. So this is another change that is recent. Is that used to in the past with this connection string. You saw the entire connection string here.
Whoa.
The whole HTTPS. So not necessarily your keys, but the connection string as you would see it in the portal. Okay. So they probably added a switch to actually show. And I'm sorry for the pixelation that on Twitch. That's terrible. Let's see if there's there's a switch for suppress the permalink so you don't show it, suppress the output, so those, now it just doesn't even show the thing anyway, so.
Suppress everything. Right. Does this information get logged? So if I were to run this via, say, GitHub Actions or Azure DevOps, would that be information that gets logged into the logs and can easily be pulled in?
I think so. It's standard out.
Okay. Nice.
So I would assume so.
Yeah.
And you can add an optional message to associate with this update. You might. Oh, so that might be good too. So if you're going to do Pulumi up, and you're going to do, let's see, what was that? The message, -m. You might say this is, urgent bug fix.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the night, and then you might give some number as to maybe the Azure DevOps
or the hash from the Git check-in or something, right?
Yeah, exactly, and that way you can tie that together.
Very nice.
So, All right. Now, what I can do, it really all depends on what else you guys would like to see. This part was super, super simple. Um, let me work with one more thing.
Yeah, we have some 10 minutes left, or 9 minutes now. So,
okay, let me
give us the
I might be able to
punchline.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the YAML. I know that sounded weird, didn't it?
Oh, somebody mentioned YAML before. There you go. Be careful what you ask for, people.
So, although it is YAML, I want to say that it's not nearly as problematic like you would see in large YAML files for Prometheus or Kubernetes. I mean, those things can get so large. What I can do here is say Azure : let's do oh gosh, what was it? Let's do environment. And
still no autocomplete in or IntelliSense in YAML, right?
No. Well, okay. Well, the thing is, though, it doesn't know what to autocomplete. This is not Pulumi specific. It's not Azure specific. This is literally key value.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say that I'm going to do in this one, this is my CUS. Let's just say my environment, this is primary. Okay. What I can do is, let's say, since this is C# code, let me go ahead and do var config equals new config, and I want Azure, and I believe it is type sensitive. Notice, and I'm going to put this side by side here, because this is actually pretty decent. I like this. So I can say var environment equals the config dot, in this case, I'm going to say require environment.
Ah, cool.
Now,
I like that.
Yeah, so now I can say, well, if the environment equals primary, and only then do I want you to build the storage account.
Right.
So now the other thing that this can help you with is, what if I say in production I've got 5 virtual machines set up, but in my test environment I don't need all 5. Maybe I just need 2.
Yep.
I can help use the config in these YAML files that says for this stack, this setting, then I can go and use this code and be able to say it's primary, which also means, check this out, Pulumi stack. What is it? New or is it new stack? I don't remember. Let me do this, and I'll try to be real quick on this. Oh, init. Thank you. Okay. So Pulumi stack init. You notice the other one was dev-cus. What if I did dev- what's the other one? Let's just do west-us.
Yes.
I think there's a new one out there now. Okay. Right now that's just a name, but this is so cool, okay? Now I have a new YAML file created. So what I'm going to do is copy this config to this file, and I'm going to say secondary, and over here I'll put west. Okay. Now I'm in the stack. So now if I did Pulumi stack ls, I'm ready to put the nail in this because this is so cool. This is super helpful. Notice that I have multiple stacks. I'm in dev-wus. Notice the asterisk. I'm in here right now, meaning that the exact same code, the code did not change.
Nice.
Very nice.
But my environment settings did. So I can go between the two. These represent the stacks. So if I'm in Central, I can say it's primary. If I'm over here in West US, I can say, well, you're secondary, which means if I go here and execute, it will not create the storage account. Now I can say, I know this is production, but if you're in production, say US versus production Brazil, you can have different environment settings using the same code.
Yeah, that's cool. And lots of logic
There's-
around that, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and now the require says that the setting must be there, right?
Right.
That it must exist, or it will fail. But when you do Pulumi up and it's looking at building the code and it looks at the output, that's when it'll say, wait a minute, it doesn't match up. So it won't even talk to Azure by then. So that's really cool. Same code base. What if you got hundreds, maybe thousands of lines of setup? You can do those small tweaks that says, okay, if it's test, you got 2 VMs. If it's production, you got 5. So it's C#.
It's free real estate. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I'm
So what
gonna
else?
have to
What
try
else?
this now. I'm super intrigued. I'm wondering how different it's going to be. I wonder how different it's going. Like, I'm gonna get in here and be like, I'm gonna call you and say, okay, I'm doing this and it doesn't make
Yeah.
sense or whatever. I'm gonna call you and ask. So
Absolutely. Now, and you notice that there's the Pulumi.Azure is the library that is installed when I built from the template.
yeah,
So, which means that if I go Pulumi dot, and let's see what else is out there. Well, there's Azure, there's F#, there's Random, Kubernetes, AWS, Azure AD, right? That's where those other provider libraries are at. They're in here and provide the whole lot of extra stuff. If I want to add New Relic right now, all I got to do is start adding New Relic to my add the package to the project, and is nothing more than an extra using.
yeah.
So from all the tools that people have come to see or show us on the stream, I think it's the first time, especially DevOps tools, it's the first time that JP said, I like this one, I'm going to use it. So I think that's the
Awesome.
statement of the year. 2021 starts with JP becoming a Pulumi
Awesome.
fan. Nice.
Awesome.
It's hard to convince him
Awesome.
for new technology, so I think you did a great job, Sean.
Wait, hard to convince who?
Fantastic.
You.
What the hell are you talking about? You ain't making it like I'm some old man. No, I don't
Yeah.
like. I don't. No. I don't like.
You don't
new
like Terraform or
technologies.
YAML, right?
Well, who like? Okay, who? I want to know if you genuinely
Terraform.
genuinely like YAML. If you say YAML, yeah, that's fine. I actually really like that. Then I want you to send me a note and tell me why. I'm just very curious because every time I've used YAML, it's been absolutely miserable. I love new stuff. I mean, I just ordered a Bluetooth blood pressure cuff that God only knows Google will start sending me ads, I'm sure, based on my blood pressure. So it's only, I mean, I love
Oh
new stuff.
man.
Anyway, this has devolved.
okay.
All right. Well, Sean, thank you so much for coming and hanging out. This was awesome. And I am going to go check out Pulumi, and I'm going to go see how many crazy C#
Fantastic.
things we can do to it. Like, I'm going to try if I can make a network team derived base stack that all of my new stacks can inherit from. I'm going to go see if it works because I'm super curious now. And we'll turn it into a game of stupid C# tricks and see what we can do. But in the interim, hey, we'll be back on Monday with Nils. He's going to come talk about some Kubernetes pod identity stuff. We gotta because we gotta get out of here because the Sandman's gonna
Kick us
come
out.
yank us out,
Yes.
out here in a minute. But follow Sean, follow his channel on Twitch, follow us on Twitter. Join the Discord. I corrected the link up at the top, so join the Discord. Ask us your questions. Have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday, and stay out of trouble.
Yeah.